Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
On a very newsy day, we have major breaks that actually are so important domestic that they even supersede what the Chinese have been doing in Ladakh, and also the shambolic debate in US presidential elections, where it looks like Donald Trump had some kind of a meltdown and said not very nice things about India, not once but twice. But we will talk about those things in the course of time. The two issues today we have, and the two big stories we have, are both originating from Uttar Pradesh, India's largest state by far. One is more immediate, and we'll talk about that in less detail, because there it's more than clutter. It is something that I will do that I don't usually do on Cut the Clutter, which is a little bit of opinion and a little bit of ranting also. But that is towards the end, because that story has a lot more clarity than clutter. The other is the trial court judgment, the CBI special court order in Lucknow on the Ayodhya case, or which should be called in fact the Babri Masjid case, because this is not the case for the title of the land deed. This is the case, a criminal case specifically for the destruction of the mosque. So that has a lot of clutter and layers and time, etc. And people. So we'll talk about that in some detail. Now, as you all know, the judge, Mr. Yadav, has acquitted all the accused in this case. Now, you can always, the judges are whipping boys. You can always say, oh, this is a terrible judgment. The critics are saying that it's a terrible judgment, that the judge has made a mistake. He might have. It's a 2,300 page judgment in Hindi, and we are reading it, as are my two very bright colleagues who cover the laws for us, Bhadra Sinha and Apurva Mandhani, on whose research I am also basing this Cut the Clutter. But as we do that, we have to remember that in a criminal investigation and criminal prosecution, the role of the prosecuting agency is crucial. Now, this is a case which India's most preeminent prosecuting agency, the CBI, has been handling for 28 years through the tenure of many prime ministers. Many prime ministers means when it started, Narasimha Rao, after that Atal Bihari Vajpayee, then again Gowda, Gujral, Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, Narendra Modi, etc. etc. So a judge is also limited in terms of options by the quality of evidence presented, and the quality of evidence lies, the onus on that lies fully on the prosecuting agency. Now, anytime something happens, major happens anywhere, people say call out the CBI. So I think it's a little bit of a formula now. Call out the CBI, order a judicial inquiry. We find that both the institutions have failed India in the course of time. So it is evident, if you read the judge's order, that the CBI itself has not presented a strong enough case. The problem in India is, in our legal system, is that any evidence can only be presented in the trial court. Now, if any evidence has not come up in the trial court, you cannot take more evidence in an appeal in the higher courts. Higher courts only assess the evidence already presented. It's not like the movies. It's not like the movies where some Sunil Dutt or some Dilip Kumar or somebody in the past, or some Sunny Deol now, will drag in some evidence in front of a big judge in a big court. It doesn't work like that. So to that extent, once a trial court rules, the chances on a case like this in appeal, I'm not saying chances are not there, but they become lesser and lesser. Now let's look at what the judge has relied upon and what exactly has happened. So you want to know this in more details, please watch Government Matters today between Rohit Tiwari and Bhadra Sinha, where Bhadra has explained what exactly has happened with timelines. So you'll see that I've also watched it, and I've also spoken with her and got inputs from her, as from Apurva I told you. So what happened in this case was, when the mosque was demolished on 6th of December 1992, after that 2 FIRs were registered. 2 criminal FIRs were registered. One was being tried in Lucknow, That was against unnamed car sevaks, unidentified, unnamed car sevaks, because they were, as you can see, hundreds of people on top of the domes. One was against specific leaders, 8 specific leaders who were named. This was a case of conspiracy, that they had planned it, they had conspired, while they might have given assurances to the Supreme Court, Prime Minister then, etc., that their intentions were purely peaceable, but they had actually conspired and had always intended to bring down the mosque. These 8 leaders are prominent. We know the names of all of them. Some are a bit obscure now, but let me just repeat them for you. L.K. Advani, Murli Manohar Joshi, Uma Bharti, Sadhvi Rithambra, Vinay Katiyar, Kalyan Singh, former Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh and also Governor of Rajasthan, Giriraj Kishore and Vishnu Hari Dalmia of these two are of Vishwa Hindu Parishad. They have both passed away since, and that's why today, for today's generations, they might sound a bit obscure. So because this trial has taken 28 years, this case has taken 20 years, so these two have passed away. So one case was going on in Raebareli, the other in Lucknow. Then at some point, and this varied with who came to power in Lucknow. And you know that in Uttar Pradesh for a long time, for long periods, BJP was not in power. Either SP or BSP was in power. BJP was out of it for quite some time. Now, in these periods, many things happened with these cases. So at some point, it was decided to club the trial in Raebareli of these 8 leaders also with the other trial in Lucknow. When that happened, then some of the people who were charged, who were being prosecuted in the trial naming these 8 leaders, they went to the High Court and they said that this is unfair and this is illegal. High Court stayed it. So that was the first injunction which delayed it for a long time. Then once again, they went to a higher court and the higher court said no. In fact, the High Court did accept this petition that this was wrong to transfer all of this to one trial court. After that, the trial court in Raebareli, it discharged Mr. Advani in the case. Against that also there was an appeal. That appeal at one level was rejected, but it was still carrying on, and in that process this case has gone into an orbit. It wasn't getting anywhere. So to cut the long story short, one individual in Ayodhya called Haji Mehboob, he went to the Supreme Court and he said, what the hell is going on? This case has now gone on for a very long time. There has to be justice. So a Supreme Court bench headed by Justice Rohinton Nariman gave a stellar order in 2017 which said that club all cases, no further delays, no further injunctions anywhere. I'm combining it all. They use their special powers under Article 142 of the Constitutions. Remember, we keep talking about this often, that sometimes the judges use it well because it is for exceptional use. Sometimes they waste the capital, their constitutional and political capital, by using it out of over enthusiasm, as in my humble view they did while dabbling in the affairs of Board of Cricket Control of India. But this was a good cause or good reason for them to invoke that special power to get complete justice done. So this Rohinton Nariman bench then ordered that a special court be set up. They said this judge will be given protection of tenure, which means even if the judge retires, he'll be given an extension so that he can complete this case. Otherwise, what happens is the usual ploy: a judge retires, new one comes, the case starts again. This one has many accused, many witnesses. So in any case, this case could have gone on forever. So he then ordered, or his bench then ordered, that this case be tried in a time-bound manner by a deadline. And he continued giving extensions to the trial judge. The last such extension was given in August this year. That's why this judgment had to be given now. So this judgment has come. Once these cases were combined, what were the cases? So we have to understand that there is a criminal law and civil law. There was a civil case in Supreme Court and criminal case, because many people might say, but Supreme Court has already said the land belonged to the Hindus, so what's the dispute now? That is a civil case. That's a property title case. मेरी ज़मीन थी या मेरी ज़मीन नहीं थी. The other is a criminal case. In criminal cases, liability is personal. In a civil case, liability is of a different type. Civil cases have individual claims, individual parties claims. They can be persons, they can be parties. Criminal case, it's the state charging you with a crime. So in these criminal cases, and criminal cases went on simultaneously as the Supreme Court looked at the civil case. In the criminal cases, the charges was framed on the following lines. Number one, charges were that these people, these leaders, spread enmity on grounds of religion. Second, they made mischievous statements which was meant to divide people and to cause violence. And third, and the most important, that this was a criminal conspiracy hatched between all of them, and they had decided to do this even when they brought the car sevaks to Ayodhya. This is what the story was. Now, under Indian criminal law, conspiracy is not easy to prove. The burden of evidence for conspiracy, particularly involving a large number of people, is very, very tough. So the CBI relied essentially on media reports, some media videos, and some witnesses from the media, essentially journalists who were covering this. These also included pictures, etc., from Praveen Jain, our colleague, of a rehearsal to bring down the mosque on the previous days. Now, what's happened is that the court has said that, look, all this evidence is not good enough, because the court examined 300 witnesses, but the judge says that the witnesses are incoherent and inconsistent, and they also contradict each other. Then the judge says, and that is something on which I might have an argument, he says that these journalists who are witnesses, they've given their published reports, not their unedited reports and footage. Now, this shows, besides other things, whatever intentions must be good, but even if intentions are good, this shows basic ignorance of journalistic practice, of how a newsroom works. A newsroom is not a place where you keep all versions of a draft as it goes through editing. Because what matters to us is what gets published, and we are responsible for that. Now, if you ask me, Shekhar Gupta, you keep saying every other day, I was there, I was in Baghdad, I was in Kabul, I was in Moscow. Where is the evidence? So and so met you. My evidence is my published work. My evidence is hardly my notebooks, because I particularly hardly took any notes. So to imagine that these journalists preserved the original unedited versions of their stories or videos is frankly unreasonable. I don't want to use stronger language. It's the first day of a judgment, but this is unreasonable. This tells you that you don't understand how a newsroom works. Similarly, for a lot of the videos, he says these are videos on VHS tapes. Remember, we used to have those tapes earlier, and these can be edited, and many of these are edited. Obviously, if those were published, they'll be edited. Remember, in 1992, we did not have live satellite TV. So once again, he has rejected that evidence. Then he says, then if all this is correct, all his understanding is correct, then who brought down the mosque? So he says this happened at the spur of the moment, because anti-social elements got involved in the crowd, and that's how it happened. So this is a conjecture. And if you again ask me, I think it's a convenient conjecture. And the judge goes on to say that the mere presence of these leaders does not mean that there was a conspiracy. He needed more evidence to establish a conspiracy. Now, we go back to the civil case that was tried in the Supreme Court. The civil case in the Supreme Court in that judgment, the judges have been very clear in calling it an egregious crime. They've also said, even while giving the title of the land to the Hindus, they've said the evidentiary value of the claim that the Hindus have put together for this land, that is more convincing than the claim of the Muslims for the land, which is why they gave the land title to the Hindus. But they said that the fact is that until the desecration of this mosque on the night of December 22, 23, 1949, that's when those small idols were placed, and then destruction on 6th of December 1992, Muslims were deliberately deprived of their place of worship. So Supreme Court goes on to underline that the Muslims had not abandoned the mosque until then. So they were deprived of it by the use of illegal methods. And the Supreme Court in this judgment also says that we will use the power under 142 of the Constitution to provide full remedy and to make sure the full justice is done. And that's how they justify giving 5 acres of land close by to build a new mosque. So I'll read some lines from the Supreme Court judgment. It says, justice would not prevail if the court were to overlook the entitlement of the Muslims while they were deprived of the structure of the mosque through means which should not be employed in a secular nation committed to the rule of law. Then, of course, they call it an egregious violation of law. And they go on to say that while this title suit is about 1,500 square meters composite, we have to provide a compensation to the Muslims. So they say it is necessary to provide restitution to the Muslim community for the unlawful destruction of their place of worship. And then the same judgment, 2019 Supreme Court judgment, goes on to say ousters of the Muslims was not through any lawful authority, but through an act which was calculated to deprive them of their place of worship. And this again go on to say Muslims have been wrongly deprived of a mosque built more than 450 years ago, which they had not abandoned. And then the court judgment also says, I'm quoting copiously from it, the structure of the mosque was brought down and the mosque was desecrated. The destruction of the mosque took place in spite of the order of the status quo from the court and an assurance given in this court. And then they go on to say the destruction of the mosque and the obliteration of the Islamic structure was an egregious violation of the rule of law. So all that is there. So the fact is the law was broken. A crime was committed, a lot of people were involved in committing the crime, and this mosque was brought down. The fact is that 28 years later, we have a situation where nobody is held guilty, and also because the case has now finished through the trial court, the possibility of bringing out any fresh evidence is near zero. And also when 3 decades have gone, witnesses have gone, memories have faded, as you have seen, many of the accused have died already. So this is a case where complete justice has not been done. Now, because justice to be done also should be seen to be done. Now, many people have said many things about it. Asaduddin Owaisi has said, as you would expect, he speaks sharp but good lines, effective lines. He said this satisfies the collective conscience of Hindutva. That is one. But I also saw something from somebody who's usually very measured, and that is Rishad Premji, the son of Azim Premji, and now he runs the Wipro group. He just has a quote on Twitter from Benjamin Franklin, and he says, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged than those that are. So which means that all the rest of us who did not pray in the mosque, or for whom, because we don't belong to the Muslim faith, we should also be as outraged that justice has not been done. That is not to say that these people couldn't be innocent, but at the same time, it's not as if a big mosque can be brought down and nobody will be guilty. So to that extent, inadequate justice has been done. Having said that, talking of justice, the second thing where I said I will also rant a little and comment a little even though the light's going down, that is the Hathras gang rape and murder case. Now, gang rapes happen, murders happen, but then what is your redressal? You think the police is there, the courts are there, the government is there, my district magistrate is there. There will be justice, there will be retribution, and more than retribution, there will be deterrence that once people get punished, other people will not do such a thing. That is why this whole clamor for death sentence for rapists, hang them in public. Let me just say that this case tells you this is all self-serving nonsense. Almost all of it is political. See the Nirbhaya case, that became such a big deal because it was political, it was convenient, it was in Delhi. You didn't have to go to the boondocks. And in the process, that became a big cause and a big story. In this case, what has happened? You can see that the police, the magistracy, the local magistracy, in many ways, a lot of the media, not all, I would say that if you look at the performance of the media in Hathras, you will still take heart and say that media, particularly television media, is a force for good. But this is a case of some mile hue hain. And you know, sometimes you watch this awful serials, teleserials and movies, Onkaras and Ishkiyas and others, and we just watched this teleserial called Mirzapur, and I think we gave it at some point because we found it too profane, too violent, and it looked unreal in the sense that how can so many people get killed in the heart of Uttar Pradesh and nobody's taking notice. But there is one thing that all these get right, and that's one thing that even an extreme version of all this like Mirzapur gets right. That is the triple nexus between gangsters, police and the politicians, and that is what you see fully in play, very unfortunately, in Hathras. Imagine if our child, God forbid, went through such trauma, if our family or your family or anybody's family, all of you, forget what caste you are, what religion you are, if happened to any of our children, and we were not even given access to the child's cremation, we were not even given time to spend with the child after the child passed away, when evidence just disappeared. I know I see this talk in Kashmir that when terrorists are killed in encounters with the armed forces, their bodies should not be given to the families because families can make political events out of them and people gather. Now, morality of that is being debated, and you've now done this to a completely innocent victim of a very poor Dalit family's daughter. Just think about it and think where we have reached so far. And when you think, you might think that some of the stuff and profanity and obscenity and this some mile hue culture that is today being portrayed in popular culture is not untrue, especially about the Hindi heartland, and there too very especially about Uttar Pradesh.